How's everybody doing? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about buying guitars new versus used. So obviously the original transaction for every guitar is for the guitar to be built and then sold to somebody brand new. Generally speaking, for late model, meaning fairly recently made guitars, that is the most expensive way to purchase the guitar, is brand new. In my opinion, and in my experience, it takes a little while to know if you're going to like a guitar or not if you're trying out a new guitar. There might be a guitar that I play in a store and I like it, but in order to form a full opinion of it, you need to really spend some time with it, like more time than you can really get by testing it out in the store. Because when you're playing a guitar in a store, you have the fact that you're out in a public place, you have distractions, you're not really warmed up ever. There's people around you that are probably playing out of tune. It's really distracting. And not to mention, you're not using your setup. You're not using your amp, your pedals, anything that you'd be used to hearing a guitar through. Now, granted, you can hear a guitar through a certain setup and you can kind of extrapolate what it would sound like through your setup compared to, if you know the characteristics of a certain amp versus the amp that you would use normally. But it's still not as good as just taking it home and hearing it the way that you're going to hear it most of the time. So my philosophy has always been that if a guitar seems like it's going to be good to the point where it's worth buying, I'll buy it, but it still kind of has to prove itself. It's always kind of a trial period of probably a few months to see how often am I going to use it, how am I going to apply the certain tones and features of that guitar versus what I already had. And then what is entirely likely to happen is I'll determine that that guitar doesn't completely suit me and I'll end up selling it. So if I bought it new, that means I'm gonna have to end up trading it in for something or just selling it. So if you just bought a brand new guitar and you played it for a few months and then you ended up trading it in, you just took a pretty big financial hit most of the time. And I'm speaking as somebody with quite a bit of personal experience with this, unfortunately. I went through a period of time where I was buying guitars very often. It was a few years ago. I did a guitar collection video when I was in the middle of that and I had all these guitars. And most of those guitars I was buying brand new. So throughout that period of time when I was kind of exploring different features and tones and trying to figure out what was the best thing out there for me, by buying everything new and doing that, not only was I spending a lot to begin with, so purchasing a guitar new at sticker price over and over and over, but then when I ended up not keeping the guitar and wanting to trade it in for something else or just sell it, I was taking another hit a second time. So you'd spend the whole amount of money for the total price, and then you take another hit, which was usually a couple $100 the second time when you go to sell it again. Now you could say that, well, you took just the initial hit and then when you sold it, you got some money back, but it really doesn't feel that way. It feels like you spent all this money and then when you want to just get rid of this thing that you kind of regretted getting, you don't get the full money back, and then when you want to get something else, you have to spend, that additional money has to be kicked back into the next thing. So let's say you bought a brand new guitar, you played it for a few months, you found that while it was good and your initial impression in the store was not wrong, or maybe you just ordered it thinking it would be good and it was good and it was good enough to keep for a few months, but you find yourself not really using it enough to aren't even maintaining it or keeping, new strings on it or whatever. When you bought that guitar new, you're probably going to take a 30 to 40% hit on average when you trade it in to get something else that you think you might like. So for a mid-range, like good quality, mid-price guitar, that could be $300 of a hit when you go to sell it, that now you have to kick that much money towards the next thing that you were to get theoretically. So for me personally, once I had lost a few $1,000s on trading in guitars that I thought I would like and then I didn't end up liking as much, that I bought new, I started to become a lot more conscientious of the purchase price versus the selling price that I was going to look at if, and most of the time when, I ended up selling or trading in that guitar. Now to clarify, I'm not talking about if you have like a mainstay guitar that is just the perfect guitar for you, that you bought it new, whatever, and you're never going to sell it. That's a totally different story. That I totally understand buying one new if it's exactly what you want. You don't want to have anybody else's, grubby little hands on it. I understand that. If you are totally confident that you will never sell it and it's perfect, go ahead and buy it new. I mean, I did that with my mainstay Les Paul, but in terms of just getting a guitar that you want to try something out a bit different tonally or feature-wise. For me personally, I've started to really only consider getting used guitars. And here's why. If you bought a guitar used for less money, most of the time, if you sell it within, let's even say, a year or two of when you bought it, you're not really going to lose any money if it's a private sale. You could most often buy one that was used. People don't really care if it's 2 years old versus 4 years old. You could keep it for a little while and sell it for basically what you bought it for. So it's a much lower risk. And even if you decided to trade it in, obviously the store needs to have some room to mark it up again. So you will take a hit, but it's much less of a hit than if you bought the guitar new. Now, of course, there are certain things to consider if you're going to buy a used guitar that you wouldn't have to consider buying a new one. The biggest aspect you need to consider on a used guitar, generally speaking, is the condition of that exact guitar that you're looking at. Obviously, new is a very specific condition, and a guitar is only ever going to be in new condition once, and it is going to be just perfect or as close to perfect as it ever could possibly be. Obviously, with a used guitar, the condition is going to vary depending on the instrument. For me personally, I would always want to get a used guitar that's in the best possible condition for the price point that I'm looking to hit. And to me, that usually means minimal scratches anywhere on it, and especially no scratches on the back of the neck where it would affect playability. And usually you would find guitars like that that were either listed in great or excellent condition. But you also have to understand that it is up to the judgment of one specific person, one random person, to determine what condition to rank that guitar. I bought a guitar used, which was a Strat that was only listed in good condition, but I could tell from the pictures that the paint was pretty much perfect, the back of the neck was perfect, the fretboard was perfect, and the only scratches that it had were these really light surface scratches on the pickguard, which is just plastic. So to me, that's basically excellent. I mean, if anything, the pickguard scratches give a little bit of character. It doesn't affect anything with the overall total condition of the guitar, and it was only listed in good condition, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. Basically, it's up to you as the buyer to look at the pictures in the listing and determine whether or not you agree with the condition that they're describing it. Now, it's fine if you don't agree with the condition. You could use that as a bargaining point, or you could just ignore it, but at least you know what you're getting yourself into. And if there's something that looks like it could be a scratch, but it's not a very clear picture, or if you're not sure, or if you just want to be reassured that it's in as good of a condition as you think it might be, you can most of the time contact the seller and ask them to either send you more specific pictures, and they will often do that because they're trying to sell the guitar, or they could describe the condition to you in a much more detailed way, and you can determine if you want it that way. So besides the initial financial benefit of avoiding trade-in loss, the side effect of that is that with a lot of guitars used, you are able to find a guitar that you want in a condition you want, often at a very reasonable price. Certain guitars you'll find used will sell for most of the price new, and even at times where the used shipping might make it more expensive than to buy it new if they offer free shipping on a new guitar but not on a used guitar. So in some cases it doesn't make financial sense. In other cases, certain models are extremely common to find used in really good condition and at a huge discount versus buying them new. For example, a Mexican Strat, you might spend about $600 on one new, and then you could get a used one in very good condition for about $350. And you know, $350 is a really good price for that level of quality of guitar. And something like a used Strat, you're gonna find them, they're a dime a dozen. You could find listings from $350 to $400 all day long, and you have plenty of guitars to choose from. Another one I've noticed that is a big savings to buy one used is a lot of guitars that were made by World Musical Instruments in Korea, which includes brands like Schecter, Chapman, PRS SE. A lot of those guitars are made over there, and they're extremely high quality, and you could spend upwards of $1,000 or more on one of those new, and a lot of those, typically they're about half the price used in really good condition. You can find really good condition used Schecters from Korea all day long for hardly any money compared to buying them new. I mean, it's really good discounts on those. Now, there are a couple of downsides, obviously, to buying a used guitar. One, which I'll briefly mention, and I don't think it's that important, is that a lot of new guitars come with some kind of a warranty, and if you buy it used, it probably does not transfer. So That being said, I have owned a lot of different guitars from different brands, and I have never in my life considered to use the manufacturer warranty even when they broke, because they will want you to take it to either a certified place that can fix it and it's going to take a long time to get fixed, or they want you to ship it back and you may or may not have to pay for the shipping, and then it's going to just be gone for a while. In my experience, it's always better just to get your guitar fixed yourself, even if it's something that would be warrantable. If it broke, it's usually not worth doing. I mean, guitar repairs are not that outrageously expensive that it's worth waiting months to get one fixed under warranty, in my opinion. So you might not have the original warranty buying it used, but to me, that's not really a factor. One thing that I did used to be concerned about was buying a used guitar that would end up being gross. You know, knowing how much and how heavily I played the guitars that I owned that I liked over the years, I would think about all the sweat and grease and grime that would just soak into the fretboard. And I mean, you can tell the difference between guitars that I've had when they were new. The fretboard was much lighter than how they ended up. I mean, it just gets soaked in with like my sweat and grime and all that nasty stuff. So for a while, I avoided used guitars just because of that sentiment. The truth is, fundamentally, germs only live for so long. Most of the time, by the time you buy a guitar, unless it happens really quickly, if you buy a used guitar, it's not going to have a lot of live germs on it and stuff that's going to be really disgusting. Not to mention the fact that you can always, I won't say always, but most of the time, you can clean a guitar up really well. There's a handful of products out there that will allow you to take grime and even the faintest little smudges and everything right off the body. You can usually clean up a fretboard pretty well. You can oil it and basically make the guitar fresh as possible for you, the new owner, to experience it. It's like if you bought a used car, you'd want to get a really good detail, and then it feels as close as possible to new when you get in it. So you're not, holding a steering wheel that somebody just sneezed on and it hasn't been cleaned. It's been cleaned. And it's really not that hard with the right products to make most guitars just cleaned up and ready for you to fill it up with your own grime. I also have this theory that the grimiest, grossest guitars are not even really in the used market, because those are the guitars that people are playing so much that they're not going to sell it. That's the one that they're keeping forever. I mean, people will keep a guitar for decades and it'll get disgusting, but they're not going to sell it because they're playing it that much. That's why they like it. That's why it gets so grimy. You're not going to find a whole lot of super, super heavily used guitars that are grimy like that. That's just kind of a theory that I have. And in my experience of selling or trading guitars, that's always been true, because it's always been a guitar that I bought that I found myself not really playing, so I played it extremely rarely. And by the time I traded it in, I might have only played it 3 or 4 times. So that's obviously not going to be a nasty guitar. It's going to be virtually new. But anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any personal stories of buying things used that were really good, where you got a really good deal, or even a horror story, I'd like to hear it.